Hi, and welcome to Reddit Confessions. She still hasn't opened the last message I sent her. It's been 97 days. And the thing is, she checks her phone obsessively. She wants to see my name light up that screen again. She needs it, but she won't open it. Because she knows that if she reads what I wrote, everything she's pretending isn't real suddenly becomes undeniable. You want to know what I wrote? Just 3 words. You were right. That's it. No dramatic goodbye. No, I'll miss you. No accusations. Just silence with a sharp edge. The same kind she used on me for years while calling it space. Before I vanished, she told me one night through half a yawn, "You're too emotional. Too soft. You take everything so personally. That's why people walk all over you." She didn't say it to be cruel. That's the worst part. She said it like she was reading the weather. And I just sat there, nodding, like maybe I was the problem for feeling too much in a world that rewards feeling nothing. But here's what she didn't know. Every small dismissal, every eye roll, every text she smirked at when I walked into the room. I noticed it. I cataloged it. I smiled through it. And I was planning. She thought I was passive. What I was quietly leaving. I didn't pack a suitcase. I didn't even take my charger. I left with the clothes on my back and a pocket full of receipts she'll never understand. Not financial, emotional. The kind of moments a husband collects while pretending things are fine. She came home to nothing. No note. No goodbye. Just my ring in the freezer next to the blueberries she always said she'd use, but never did. And that text. You were right. Now, she's unraveling. I've heard through mutuals that she hasn't slept in days. That she cried in the middle of the cereal aisle last week. That she checks every new message with this wild hope, only to see it's not me. I could say I feel bad, but the truth is, I don't know what I feel anymore. I just know this. The silence I gave her is louder than any argument we ever had. And she can't escape it. The silence was supposed to be the end of it. That's what I told myself when I turned off my location, shut down my accounts, and deleted the Spotify playlist we used to fall asleep to. I imagined it would be clean. Like pulling out a thorn, sharp pain, then relief. But I didn't realize that silence doesn't end things. It amplifies them. You know what happened the day after I disappeared? She posted a story of her breakfast. 2 eggs, half an avocado, and some quote about new beginnings. A few mutuals even messaged me screenshots. "She doesn't seem to care, bro," one of them wrote. And I believed that, for about 48 hours. But then the cracks started showing. I wasn't watching her directly. I didn't stalk her socials. I didn't need to. I had a friend at her office. Not even a close one. Just a guy who used to help me with fantasy football picks. He reached out with a simple message. "Hey, man, is everything okay with you too? Lorna's been acting strange. Like really off." Apparently, she left a meeting halfway through because her hands wouldn't stop shaking. She forgot her laptop at a cafe. She accidentally sent a file filled with random grocery items to a client, instead of the actual pitch deck. One of her coworkers asked if she was sick. She said no. But when they turned around, she was crying. She doesn't cry. Not like that. Not unless something's been ripped out of her chest. And she has no idea I know any of this. She thinks I'm gone. Fully gone. Maybe dead. Or on a bus to somewhere with no return address. I didn't even leave clues, and trust me, that was intentional. I know how her mind works. She wants puzzles. She needs explanations. And I gave her neither. Just a quiet exit and a hallway light that's probably still on. I keep thinking back to the last month before I left. It plays in my head like a documentary narrated by someone too exhausted to edit. I remember that Tuesday night when I came home soaking wet from a pipe job, smelling like rust and chlorine. She was on the couch, scrolling on her phone, legs tucked under her, hair twisted in that lazy bun she knew I loved. She looked at me like I was a houseplant she forgot to water. I asked her if she wanted Thai or Italian for dinner, and without even looking up, she said, "Surprise me." I did. I surprised her by never coming back. But don't think for a second that I feel strong. I'm not writing this to seem heroic. I didn't teach her a lesson. I'm writing this because I don't know what to do with all the quiet. The nights stretch out like questions I can't answer. I think about her brushing her teeth, feeding the cat, locking the door, and for a moment, I wonder if she pauses. If she feels the space where I used to be. I wonder if she regrets it. Not just losing me, but never really seeing me. And now the regret is catching up. Fast. My cousin told me she showed up to his doorstep in the middle of the night last week. Said she needed to talk to someone who knew me. She asked if I had mentioned her. My cousin told her I hadn't said a word, which is true. I haven't spoken her name out loud since the day I vanished. The worst part? A piece of me wants to answer her. Just once. Just to see her reaction. Just to hear her voice break when she realizes I'm still listening. Still here. Still hurting. But I won't. Because if I break the silence, it becomes a conversation. And conversations are how she used to pull me back in. With soft apologies, half smiles, and excuses that sounded like lullabies. No, she told me once I was too fragile for the real world. She's about to find out what fragility looks like when it leaves without a sound. The first time she really tried to contact me, and I mean really tried, not just a few scattered texts or guilt-baiting emails, was on a Tuesday at exactly 1:12 a.m. My old phone number lit up through the forwarding system I set up before I left. Most people don't realize that even after you disconnect, you can still see the calls come in. You just can't answer. It's like watching a ghost knock on your door over and over, and all you can do is stare through the peephole. She called 6 times in one night. The last one lasted 8 minutes. I wasn't on the line, but I still heard everything. Because, yeah, I set it to record. She wasn't crying. Not at first. Her voice was tight, defensive, like she was bracing against shame. She said things like, "I know I messed up, and you don't have to come back, just let me know you're alive." But then it cracked, like a windshield hit dead center. She whispered something I haven't stopped thinking about since. I don't even know what it is I lost. I just know I lost it too late. That hit harder than I expected. Because the truth is, she's right. She doesn't know what she lost. She doesn't know what it's like to have stayed up 3 nights in a row Googling how to fix a one-sided relationship. She doesn't know I once cried quietly in the laundry room because she rolled her eyes when I tried to kiss her forehead. She doesn't know how many times I told myself, it's just a phase. She's stressed. She loves me, just in a different way now. I built an entire reality around her indifference and called it commitment. And now she's unraveling, trying to retrace steps I already burned behind me. She showed up at my dad's old workshop 2 days ago. I never told her I still had the key. It's where I go when the silence gets too loud. A rusted building with creaky floors and dust that smells like memories. Somehow she found it. Maybe through old mail. Maybe through the map I once left inside a birthday card, thinking she'd never notice. But when she walked in, I wasn't there. I had left the place just 30 minutes before. She missed me by half an hour. I know because the neighbor across the alley called me. Said, "Hey man, some lady was here." Looked shaken. Kept checking her phone. Sat on the curb like she was waiting for the ground to open up. That mental image? Her, alone, surrounded by rust and echoes. It should have made me feel powerful. Instead, it made me feel small. Like I was watching a movie I used to star in, and now I couldn't even recognize the plot. But I didn't go back. Because this wasn't about punishment. It never was. I didn't disappear to make her suffer. I disappeared because staying had become an act of self-erasure. Every time I looked in the mirror, I saw a man she didn't respect. A man she tolerated. A man she humored like an elderly neighbor who talked too much about the past. Do you know what it does to someone to be slowly, methodically erased? You become a ghost before you even leave. She thought I wouldn't survive without her. That my softness meant weakness. That my silence meant surrender. But she didn't understand. Silence, in the right hands, is a weapon. Not to destroy, but to protect the pieces of yourself still worth saving. Now she's hunting breadcrumbs I never left. Every place she checks is already emptied of me. Every person she asks has nothing to give her. Every version of me she remembers is already buried under months of quiet healing she was never part of. And here's the cruelest truth. Even if she found me, even if she stood in front of me and screamed my name, she wouldn't be calling out the man she abandoned. She'd be shouting into the shell of someone who doesn't exist anymore. That's what regret does. It turns the past into a locked door. And she's finally realized. I took the key with me. There's this strange thing that happens when you finally leave someone who expected you to stay broken. You'd think they'd forget you. Move on. Repaint the house. Change the sheets. Get new coffee mugs. But instead, they go backwards. They dig up pieces of the past you didn't even know mattered. And suddenly, they're trying to glue together a version of you that no longer fits the mold. Last week, she called my high school best friend. They hadn't spoken in nearly a decade. Not since the wedding. Actually, she never liked him. Said he was too sarcastic, too nostalgic, too full of meaningless stories. But now she's desperate. Now the stories have meaning. She asked him if I still write poetry. Poetry. I hadn't written anything since our 3rd year of marriage when she laughed at a piece I showed her and said it sounded like something a lonely teenager would post online. That moment stuck. Quietly. Like a splinter you never pull out. I stopped writing. I stopped creating. I stopped trying to be anything she wouldn't roll her eyes at. And now, after all that silence, she's reaching for the very things she once dismissed. It's wild. I disappeared physically, but emotionally? She's only just realizing how absent she was. And now the echo of everything she ignored is catching up with her like a scream in an empty hallway. I heard from another friend. She went to my mother's grave. We never talked much about my mom. She passed when I was in my early 20s, long before Lorna and I met. I only mentioned her a handful of times over the years, mostly in the way you mentioned something fragile. Once, I told Lorna I visited that grave whenever I felt like I was losing myself. And now, she's gone there. Alone. Like maybe the ghost of my mother could tell her where I went. But I'm not hiding. Not really. I just stopped being available to the person who made me feel like an afterthought in my own life. And yet, I'd be lying if I said this was easy. Some mornings, I still expect to hear her humming in the kitchen. I half turn in bed and reach for a body that isn't there. I walk by strangers who wear her perfume, and my stomach knots like it used to when I was waiting for her to come home from work meetings that always ended too late and left her too tired to talk. I'm not immune to memory. I'm just done letting it drag me back into a version of myself built for someone else's comfort. The weirdest part? She started sending me photos. Not selfies. Not apologies. Just places. The gas station where we met during that freak storm. The tiny diner where she first called me her safe place. Even the cracked sidewalk near the old apartment where we had our worst fight. The one where I cried and she said, "Stop being so dramatic, Merritt. You're a man." These photos come with no words. No captions. Just silence. And I know what she's doing. She's trying to draw a map. But what she doesn't understand is that I was never lost. I was just somewhere she refused to follow. Somewhere deeper. Quieter. Somewhere she didn't want to go until it was too late to walk beside me. This isn't about punishment. I keep reminding myself of that. This isn't revenge. I don't want her to suffer. Not really. But I also can't let her rewrite the past like it was some misunderstanding. Like we both just fell apart, and it wasn't her choice, over and over again, to make me feel invisible while telling me to grow up. Because here's the truth no one tells you. When someone chooses silence, it's not because they've given up. It's because screaming didn't work. Crying didn't work. Explaining, compromising, bending, breaking, begging, none of it worked. Silence is what's left when you've said everything and were never heard. She's hearing me now, but I'm not speaking anymore. I didn't expect her to show up in person. Not here. Not at this place. I had rented the cabin through a friend of a friend, tucked away on the edge of an overgrown town, so quiet even the trees seemed to whisper instead of rustle. The place was barely on GPS. The mailbox didn't have a number, and the driveway was hidden behind a tangle of pine, so thick you'd miss it if you blinked. That's what I wanted. Disconnection. Peace. Anonymity. No echoes of what used to be. But she found it. I was inside reading a dog-eared copy of A Man Called Ove, something I picked up from the used bookstore in town because the man on the cover looked like me, tired and stubborn, when I heard the knock. 3 sharp taps. Not the kind a stranger makes. The kind someone uses when they're too nervous to ring a bell. My stomach fell through the floor before I even stood up. I opened the door, and there she was. Lorna. Her hair was pulled back in a loose braid, eyes swollen from crying or sleeplessness or both. Her lips parted like she had rehearsed something on the way up, but forgot it all the second she saw my face. I didn't say anything. Neither did she, at first. She just looked at me like I had been gone for years instead of weeks. Like I'd aged without her. And maybe I had. Then, softly, I didn't know where else to go. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was tragic. For so long, she made me feel like I was the one clinging too tightly. Like I was some emotional burden she had to carry while balancing the rest of her curated life. And now she stood there like a soaked postcard from a life I tried to forget. "I'm not coming back," I said. Her shoulders dropped, but not in defeat. In understanding. "I don't want you to," she whispered. I just need to talk. Can I come in?" I stepped aside. Mistake number 1. She walked in slowly, like stepping onto sacred ground. Her eyes moved across the room, the unmade bed, the journal on the desk, the unpacked bag in the corner. She touched the back of a chair like it meant something. I hated how familiar she still looked in a space I had made specifically to feel unlike our home. She sat on the couch without asking. "I had a dream about you," she said suddenly. "You were standing in a field, back turned. I kept calling your name, but you wouldn't turn around. You just stared into the distance like I wasn't even there." I didn't respond, because that wasn't a dream. That was our marriage. She reached into her coat and pulled out a tiny notebook. Torn pages, folded corners. Her handwriting. "I wrote this after you left. I don't even know if it means anything now, but I need to say it. Not for forgiveness. I know I don't deserve that. I need to say it because I forgot how to talk to you when you were still listening." That line landed like a slap. Because it was true. She talked to everyone but me. Friends, coworkers, social media, even strangers. I was always the last to hear her thoughts, if at all. And when I begged for honesty, she said I was too sensitive. Now she was here, spilling honesty like it was the only language she had left. I let her read. I let her cry. I didn't move. She said she had blamed me for a long time. For her unhappiness. For the cracks in our life. For the coldness between us. But in the silence after I left, she saw herself. Really saw herself. And she didn't like what looked back. I told her that's what silence does. It echoes the truth. She asked if I missed her. I didn't answer. Because the truth is complicated. I missed her laugh, sure. I missed the way she used to trace her finger along my arm when she was half asleep. I missed the sound of her brushing her teeth next to me. Mundane, comforting. But I didn't miss feeling small. I didn't miss tiptoeing around her moods. I didn't miss rewriting myself to fit her convenience. After a while, she stood up. "I'll go," she said. I nodded. She walked to the door, but paused. Her voice cracked on the last words she said to me that night. "You didn't deserve the version of me you got." She left before I could say anything. I stood there for a long time after, staring at the doorknob she had touched. Then I walked over to the couch, picked up the notebook, and sat in the dark. I didn't read it. Not yet. Because something in me still isn't ready to let her back in. Not even through her words. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was upset, or restless, or flooded with emotion. I didn't sleep because I couldn't stop listening to the sound of my own heartbeat, to the wind scratching across the tin roof, to the silence that stretched out longer and louder now that she'd stood in it with me. The quiet had always been mine, my only shelter. But after Lorna left the cabin, it felt invaded. Like even though she was gone again, her words stayed behind, floating just above the floorboards, waiting to be replayed. The notebook sat unopened on the coffee table for almost 12 hours. I didn't want to read it. I wanted to be stronger than that. I wanted to prove, to myself if no one else, that I wasn't hungry for her closure. That I could exist without dissecting every sentence she finally decided to share, now that she didn't get to control the conversation. But by sunrise, I was already holding it in my hands. I didn't sit down. I didn't breathe. I just stood in the dim orange light spilling through the blinds and started flipping pages. It wasn't what I expected. It wasn't some long confession or a step-by-step apology. It was fragments, memory scraps, sentences written as if they came to her in dreams or panic or guilt. Things like, "He always paused before he spoke," like his words were furniture being rearranged carefully so I could sit with them comfortably. And I started making fun of his emotions when I realized I couldn't match them. It made me feel less broken to pretend he was weaker. Some lines were so intimate they felt like wounds she'd sliced open onto the page. Others felt like manipulation, like she still wanted to be seen as the one who finally understood. I wasn't sure if the words were healing me or haunting me, but I read every one. And then I burned it. I didn't do it out of rage. I did it because I refused to let her rewrite the past into poetry. She wanted to be the narrator now, the one telling the story of a man who hurt silently and a woman who didn't know better. But I remember every dismissal. Every time I had to choose between defending myself and keeping the peace. Every sigh when I tried to talk. Every smirk when I was vulnerable. And no notebook would change that. Later that day, she tried to come back. She must have parked further down the road this time because I didn't hear her car. I only heard the knock, soft, like a question with no real punctuation. I didn't answer it. I stood at the window and watched her silhouette behind the door. She didn't knock again. She just waited. 5 minutes. Then 10. Then she sat on the porch steps like she belonged there. Like the threshold of my peace was hers to borrow. That's when the storm rolled in. I had heard thunder in the distance for hours, but I didn't think much of it. This town gets lightning like it's seasonal wallpaper. But this time, the sky cracked open like something divine was furious. Rain poured so suddenly, it looked fake. Hollywood-level drama. I thought she'd run for her car. She didn't. She stayed seated, soaked to the bone, arms hugging her knees, head tilted back like she deserved to be punished by the sky. And still, I didn't open the door. Because this wasn't a movie. This wasn't some grand romantic moment where she gets drenched and I pull her inside, and everything we shattered suddenly glues itself together through some sad, wet embrace. This was real. And in real life, rain doesn't fix what rot has eaten away for years. So I let her sit there. I went to the back of the cabin and sat in the one chair that didn't face the porch. I put on music, not our music, not hers, something instrumental and cold and distant. And I waited for the storm to pass. Eventually, it did. When I came back to the front window, she was gone again. But this time, she left something behind. A scarf. The red one. The one I gave her on our first trip to Vermont, when she had forgotten to pack anything warm and spent 3 days wrapped in my jacket like a burrito. She said back then, "You always think ahead. You'd make a good husband." Funny how we write our own irony without knowing it. The scarf was soaked through, clinging to the porch railing like it had tried to stay. Like maybe it knew she wasn't welcome inside, but wanted to be near me anyway. I didn't touch it. I just stood there staring at it, feeling the weight of something I couldn't name pressing into my chest like a bruise that had finally stopped swelling. She was trying. I saw that. But sometimes trying isn't enough. Especially when you only start after the damage is already carved into the foundation. The scarf stayed there for 3 days. I thought about moving it, tossing it in the woods, mailing it back to whatever address she was hiding behind now. But I didn't. It felt like a test, not from her, but from myself. Could I live with this soft, dripping reminder of a woman who had once kissed my knuckles in the back seat of a borrowed car and promised, "I'll never take you for granted"? Apparently not. Because on the 3rd day, I broke. I didn't bring the scarf inside. I just sat across from it, behind the window, drinking bad coffee, watching it dry under the sun like it belonged to a ghost still hanging around my porch. That's the thing about grief people never tell you. It lingers in objects. Scarves, toothbrushes, voicemail recordings. It clings to the unremarkable and transforms it into something sacred and sick all at once. That same afternoon, my phone, the one with the new number, the one only 3 people had access to, rang. I didn't recognize the voice on the other end at first. It was older, thinner, like sandpaper dragged across a memory. But then it hit me. It was her sister, Harper. We hadn't spoken in years. She was always the outsider of their family, too blunt, too skeptical, too unpolished to fit the polished image Lorna liked to present. And yet, in her own way, Harper had always seen me. Really seen me. At our wedding, she pulled me aside and said, "You've got a big heart. She'll either grow into it or drown in it. Just promise me you'll notice the difference." I didn't promise her anything. Now, years later, her voice was shaking. "She's not okay, Merritt." I didn't respond. "She's not sleeping. She's not eating. She talks to herself sometimes. I found her on the bathroom floor last night, just rocking, holding your wedding photo. I don't know what she's trying to prove or what kind of redemption she thinks she's earning, but it's not healthy. You were right to leave." I told her that. But she's spiraling. Still, I said nothing. Not because I didn't care, but because I cared too much. And caring again, it felt like inviting a fire back into a house made of matches. Harper continued, "She thinks you're seeing someone." That made me laugh. Not because it was funny. Because it was so absurd it flipped something inside me. I haven't touched another person since I left. I haven't flirted, haven't scanned a room for someone new, haven't even imagined intimacy. I've been grieving. Not just her, but the version of myself I lost loving her. I told her she doesn't get to ask those questions, Harper added, more softly now. Not anymore. That quiet loyalty in her voice, it undid something in me. Because for so long, I was alone in that marriage. I thought no one noticed. No one saw the weight I carried behind every forced smile, every retreat from confrontation, every bedtime silence. Turns out, someone did. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked finally. Harper sighed. "Because I'm not on her side. I'm on yours." And I think you deserve to know how far she's falling. Not so you'll save her, but so you'll remember why you left. That night, I dreamed of the red scarf again. Only in the dream, it wasn't wet. It was on fire, burning quietly on the porch railing. No smoke, no sound, just flames licking the fabric like it was always meant to be consumed. And I stood behind the glass, just watching. In the morning, I found the scarf still there. But something was different. There was a note pinned to it now. I hadn't heard her arrive, hadn't seen her come, but she'd been there. Again, close enough to touch the porch, close enough to be a shadow in my quiet. The note was short. I know you don't owe me a thing, but I remember who you were before I broke you. If that version of you ever still exists, even in fragments, I'd give anything to meet him again. L. No begging, no guilt, just that. I didn't cry. I just folded the note in half, put it inside a book I wasn't reading, and sat on the floor for a long, long time. Because part of me wanted to believe that version still existed too. But another part wasn't so sure. I waited a week before I did anything. 7 days of staring at that note she left pinned to the scarf, the words looping in my head until they lost shape and became something else. Not quite regret, not quite hope, just noise. I tried to focus on other things. I went into town. I fixed a broken floorboard. I baked bread for the first time in my life and burned it. But nothing silenced the echo of that final line. I'd give anything to meet him again. What she didn't realize is, I'd been trying to meet that version of myself again too. The man who believed in small gestures. The man who stayed up to warm her car on cold mornings. The man who left notes in her lunch bag just because. That man wasn't dead. He was just buried. Buried under years of emotional calluses, of quiet dismissals, of being told he felt too much. But maybe, just maybe, there was a way back. Not for us, but for me. That's when I finally wrote back. Not with a text. Not a call. I wrote her a letter. By hand. Pen to paper. My handwriting was messier than I remembered. My fingers shook a little. I didn't reread it. I didn't even know what I'd say until the pen started moving. But I filled 3 pages. Not with blame. Not with bitterness. Just the truth. How I felt. How I healed. How I still carry some things and always will, but not as weights anymore. More like old scars that ache when it rains. I told her she was right. She didn't know me anything, and I didn't know her either. But I also told her that I see her now. Not the version that left me empty, but the one who's finally facing her own reflection without flinching. And that matters. That counts for something. Because healing doesn't always end in reunion. Sometimes it ends in mutual respect and separate lives built from the wreckage of a shared past. I mailed the letter and didn't expect a response. Instead, I got something better. A month later, I received a photo. No words. No explanation. Just a picture of the red scarf, tied around a tree near a lake we used to visit. A place we hadn't been in years. And next to it, a stone. On the stone, painted carefully in faded brush strokes, were 2 words, still growing. I smiled. Not because it meant we'd start over. Not because anything had been undone. But because growth had finally become a shared language between us. Even if we were no longer speaking it in the same house. I still live in the cabin. I still listen to the silence. But now it doesn't ache. It breathes. It feels like possibility. And when the wind moves just right, sometimes I imagine that scarf dancing. Not as a relic of who we used to be, but as a ribbon tied to the version of ourselves we're still becoming. Thank you for watching this story on Reddit Confessions. If you made it this far, I'd love to know. What moment in this story hit you the hardest? Was it the scarf in the rain? The silent voicemail? The final letter? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We read every single one. And don't forget to subscribe to Reddit Confessions for more true stories that cut deep, heal slow, and always leave you thinking.